You wake up because something hurts. Again. Maybe it's the stone pressing into your back. Maybe it's the draft from the hole in the wall. Or maybe it's your side, where that infected cut has started to smell like meat that lost a fight with the sun. Either way, you're awake now. Congratulations. It's still dark. Not peaceful dark. The kind of dark where the only thing louder than the silence is your own heartbeat. You blink a few times. Nothing changes. You forgot to plug the crack under the door again, so the cold has crept in and made itself at home. Your blanket, if you can call it that, is rough wool that smells like wet fur and disappointment. It hasn't been cleaned since your last city, possibly ever. The straw underneath is damp, not from rain, from time. You shift slightly. There's a blade under your pillow. You don't take it out. You just touch it. Make sure it's still there. You don't even remember the last time you sharpened it, but it's better than waking up with nothing. That's how Janek died. There's no fire. Fires cost light, and light costs anonymity. So instead, you have damp, breath-fogging, bone-deep cold. It lives in your joints now. You stretch your fingers. One of them doesn't move anymore. Another bends the wrong way. You sit up, slowly, carefully. There's a bucket in the corner. It's for everything. You don't look at it. Your boots are still on, always. The one time you took them off to sleep, someone stole them. You spent 3 days limping barefoot through slush and broken glass before stabbing a man for his. They didn't even fit. You rub your eyes and feel grit. Not sleep. Real grit. Ash. Dust. Maybe blood. Your hair smells like the candle wax you spilled 2 nights ago. That was the last of it. There's a sound outside. One cough, wet, sharp, close. You freeze. Could be nothing. Could be everything. You reach down and wrap your fingers around the hilt under your pillow. Your hand knows the shape better than it knows your own face. You haven't seen your own reflection in months. You think that's probably for the best. You listen. Deep breath. Shallow room. Muffled footsteps. Distant bells. And somewhere far off, shouting. It's always shouting. That's how mornings start in this line of work. You stand. Quietly. The floor creaks. Just once. You pause. 1 creak means you. 2 means company. You wait. Silence. Good. Your knees crack like old branches. You pull your cloak around you. It doesn't help. It just hides the shape of your knives. You check your pouch. 2 coins, both sticky, a packet of powder, a vial of something that should be poison or wine. You can't smell the difference anymore. Then 3 soft knocks. You don't breathe. 2 more knocks, then a pause, then 1. You know that pattern. You hate that pattern. You step toward the door, blade now in your sleeve, heart in your throat, breath held like it's a favor from the gods. You don't open it yet. You don't speak. You just listen again. Still nothing. Eventually you crack the door, just enough to see the street, empty. That's worse than seeing someone. You step outside anyway, because staying means being found, and being found means not being found again. Your feet hit mud, your shoulder hits shadow. The door closes behind you, another room you might never return to, another night survived. And it's not even morning yet. You weren't born a killer, but no one's born anything in a world like this. You're born hungry, cold, screaming into straw while your mother bleeds quietly nearby, hoping the rats don't get to you first. Your first memory? Not a name, not a face, just noise. Boots on stone, a bowl breaking, someone laughing too loud and someone else not laughing at all. Your family, if you can call them that, lived behind a tannery, which meant your lungs were soaked in the stink of boiled urine and animal skin long before you ever knew what clean air smelled like. You didn't learn to walk. You learned to flinch, fast. You were small, quick, unimportant, which meant you were useful. You carried messages, slipped through doors, listened at keyholes. They said you had ears like a mouse and hands that left no sound. That was a compliment. The man who first noticed you didn't give his name. He never would. He wore gloves in summer and his breath smelled like iron and mint leaves. He didn't ask you if you wanted work. He asked you if you liked to eat, and you did. So one night he gave you a coin, told you to drop a note through a window and walk away. You did. The next morning, the man who lived there was dead. You didn't ask questions. You asked if there was more work. There was. The next task came with rules. Walk slow. Speak never. Keep your eyes down. If anyone asks, you're just a kitchen boy. You weren't. You were a shadow following a man with a coin pouch that jingled like a threat. You didn't kill him. Someone else did. But you saw how it was done. Clean. Fast. One hand to the mouth, one cut at the neck, like harvesting turnips. They said you had potential. They took you in. Not to a guild, not to a castle, just a stone room behind a butcher's stall. Cold, windowless. They gave you rags, a blade, a cup of water. Then they beat you, not out of cruelty, out of custom. It was a test. Bleed but don't cry. Shake but don't beg. Fall but get up. You passed. They taught you to move like a cat, but not the noble kind from tapestries, the half-starved alley sort with ribs showing and eyes too bright. You learned silence. Then you learned how to make others silent. They taught you pressure points, nerve clusters, which parts of the body scream loudest, and how to shut them up. And then came the knife. Not a sword, not a bow, a knife, because swords are noisy, bows take space, but a knife fits in your hand like a prayer no one says out loud. You practiced on pigs at first, then chickens, then something you never saw clearly. They never used your name, just you. Wait here. Clean that. Go now. And eventually, he doesn't need to see tomorrow. That was the closest thing you ever got to a promotion. You didn't ask why. You didn't ask who. You just walked into the dark with a blade in your sleeve and too much noise in your chest. You were 13. Now you're older. Not by much, but you feel ancient. Your knees hurt. Your back cracks. Your fingers tremble after long nights. You've bled for people you never met and killed men who never saw you coming. You've worked for nobles, priests, traders, rebels, all of them with gold on their breath and blood on their hands. They smile at you like they're better, then ask you to disappear someone they once toasted. You never fit in, not with beggars. You scare them. Not with soldiers. You don't march. Not with thieves. You don't steal. You erase. You exist between shadows. In the pause between bell tolls. You sleep where rats are too tired to bite and eat whatever doesn't fight back. And somehow, that's still better than the place you started. They don't welcome you. There is no ceremony. No cloak, no crest, no dramatic oath under a full moon. Just a stone room that smells like boiled leather and dried sweat, and a man with one eye who hasn't blinked since you arrived. You're not told what this place is, but you already know, because it has no windows. And because the first thing they give you isn't food. It's a blindfold. You don't ask questions. You learned that long ago. They tie the cloth tight, rough linen that smells like mildew and old blood. Someone grabs your arm, strong fingers, calloused, indifferent, and you're led down steps that creak once, then vanish into silence. It smells worse down here. Wet stone, iron smoke, something sweet and rotten. Your feet touch straw, not in a comforting way, in a someone bled here recently way. You're told to kneel, you do. The stone is cold, always cold. Then the voice, not a loud voice, not cruel, just tired. Like someone who said these words 100 times and never once cared how they landed. If you want to leave, leave now. You won't be followed, you won't be forgiven. You don't move, you wouldn't know where to go. If you want to stay, bleed. Still blindfolded, you feel something press against your palm. A knife, wooden handle, dull blade, heavy with implication. You turn your hand, press the edge into your skin. You think of food, of warmth, of survival. Then you slice, not deep, but enough. The pain is sharp, real, more honest than anything you've heard in years. You hold out your hand. Someone grabs it, rough cloth against your wrist, and your blood is smeared on something. Stone, parchment, someone's skin, you'll never know. They remove the blindfold. The room is smaller than you thought. One candle, two faces, both watching you like they're trying to decide if you're still prey or finally a predator. You don't speak. That's part of it. Words come later, sometimes. They teach you hand signals. How to blink once for danger, twice for done. How to move without making footsteps. How to cut a throat so clean the man doesn't even drop his cup. They show you how to die without dying. How to fake a cough, a limp, a confession. How to disappear in a crowd of 5 or 1. You learn silence like it's a second language. You learn patience like it's your only religion. Sometimes they bring in pigs, sometimes chickens. Sometimes you think, it's not an animal. You're told not to ask. You're told not to cry. You don't. The man with one eye teaches you how to hold a blade with 2 fingers and make it matter. He never yells. He doesn't need to. Another man teaches you poisons. He smells like vinegar and keeps his fingernails black on purpose. He gives you a vial one day and says, drink this if you're caught. You ask, will it kill me? He says, eventually. That's the closest thing to affection anyone ever shows you. The first time they send you out, it's not to kill. It's to follow. You trail a merchant for 3 hours in the rain. Your cloak gets soaked, your feet blister. You learn that patience isn't waiting. It's choosing not to act until it's almost too late. The second time, it's a test. A drunk man in an alley. No guard, no weapon. Just a coin purse and a knife in your hand. They say nothing when you return. Just nod once and clean the blade. By the time they give you a target with a name, you've already forgotten your own. And that, more than anything, is your true initiation. Not the knife, not the blood, not the silence, the forgetting. You don't carry a sword. Swords are for knights, guards, and men who want to be seen. You're not one of them. You don't get seen. You get remembered, briefly, in someone else's obituary. You carry a knife, not a beautiful polished thing with silver inlay and a name like Whisper or Mercy. No, your knife has no name, just a chipped edge and a handle wrapped in cloth so it doesn't slip when your hands get wet. And they always get wet. Sometimes it's rain, sometimes it's blood, sometimes it's whatever was in that man's coat pocket you shouldn't have touched. You don't carry just one knife either. One is optimism, 2 is survival, 1 in the boot, 1 behind your belt, 1 small blade tucked into the side seam of your cloak, dull but dependable, like an old friend who's bad at conversation. Your blades aren't sharp, not really. You don't have a whetstone. You have a flat rock and a habit of scraping them against door frames when no one's looking. They drag more than they cut, but sometimes a messy wound says more than a clean one. And besides, in your line of work, speed matters more than beauty. You also carry string. Rope's too expensive and heavy. But string is magic. You've strangled a man with it. Tied shut a bleeding leg. Suspended a poisoned apple from a beam in a place where only one man would find it. He did. You carry powder, not the kind noble women wear. Yours is brown, bitter, packed in a folded scrap of paper. You don't know what it's made of. Someone once said dried toad lungs. Someone else said crushed bones and bile. You don't care. All you know is this. Blow it into a guard's eyes and he screams like he's just met hell. Sometimes he lives, sometimes he doesn't. Either way, you walk past. If you're lucky, you have poison. Nothing elegant. No tiny vials of transparent liquid that kills with a single drop. You have paste, black-green, smells like garlic left too long in the sun. You dip your blade in it when you remember. It clings to metal, clings to fabric, clings to your hands if you're not careful. You've seen what it does. Convulsions, drool, eyes that don't quite understand they're dying. Sometimes you wish it were quicker. Then you remember, this job was never supposed to be kind. You don't carry a bow. Too loud, too big, too easy to lose. You've used slings before. Pebbles from gutters, weighted with bits of bone. It works sometimes. If they're close. If they're not armored. If the wind isn't against you. If you prayed recently, which you haven't. You carry wax. To block locks. To seal letters. To fill the keyhole in the merchant's door just enough to delay his escape by 3 seconds. More than enough for your knife to catch up. You carry charcoal. To mark doors. To leave signals. To draw one simple symbol that tells someone, somewhere, he's here. You carry your hands. They're not weapons, not anymore. Too many breaks, too many burns. But they know what to do. They've held throats, stolen rings, pushed needles into places where people don't usually check. You don't carry mercy. It's heavy, loud, and tends to slip out when you need silence. You've tried to carry guilt, but it doesn't fold well and it makes your fingers shake. And so you keep it simple. One knife, one pouch, one vial, one name you never say aloud. Because in your world, tools rust, but reputation stains forever. And even the poorest blade, if used right, can turn a king into a whisper. They didn't tell you why. They never do. Just a name, a location, and one sentence whispered like a curse. He sleeps near the fire, make it fast. You nodded because that's what you're supposed to do. But inside, your stomach turned. Not from fear, not yet. From the food. You hadn't eaten in 2 days, and the stew they gave you as payment for the message last night was mostly bone and possibly hoof. It was raining when you left. Of course it was. You walked with your head down, cloak heavy and soaked. The mud pulled at your boots like it knew what you were about to do. The smell of smoke drifted from chimneys, mixing with piss and wet wool. The town was quiet, the kind of quiet that tells you everyone's pretending they don't hear what's happening outside. You reached the building, a barn, maybe once. Now just 4 walls, a roof, and a door that didn't fit right in the frame. Inside, warmth. Not comfort, just temperature. A single man slept near a small fire, blanket over one shoulder, boots still on. No armor, no guards, no weapon in hand. You waited in the corner, in the dark, heart thudding like a trapped animal behind your ribs. He snored, not loudly, just enough to remind you he was alive, just enough to remind you he wouldn't be soon. You stepped forward. Your boots made no sound. Your hands remembered the lesson, right hand on the mouth, left hand with the blade. But when you got close enough to see his face, he was younger than you. That shook you. You were still 17. You still had a milk tooth when they gave you your second blade. But he looked like a farm boy. Maybe had been. Maybe he'd stolen something. Maybe he just owed the wrong man a favor. His face was calm. He looked warm. And for a second, just a second, you wondered what would happen if you turned and left. That was when he opened his eyes. He didn't scream. He blinked, confused, the way you blink when you wake up from a too short dream. And then your hand moved, because it had to. You did what they taught you. Hand to mouth. Blade across the throat. Quick, deep, down, not across. It worked. It always works. He died with a wet sound. Like something boiling over. Like someone choking on their own apology. You held him there. Not because you had to. Because you couldn't let go. Because his eyes stayed open. The fire crackled. No footsteps came. No screams. No gods. Just blood on your sleeve. And a heat rising in your chest that wasn't triumph. Wasn't anything. You sat there for a long time. They hadn't told you what to do after. Eventually, you wiped the blade on his blanket. Took the coin purse. Light. Always light. Slipped out through the back, into the alley, into the rain. The world didn't change. No trumpet. No storm. No voice from the sky. Just a wet cloak. Just your heartbeat. Just your breath suddenly louder than it should have been. That night you didn't sleep. Not because you were afraid. Because you didn't feel anything. And that was worse. They asked how it went. You said, fast. They nodded. Handed you another name. You took it. But for weeks after, every time you smelled smoke, you thought of him. Every time you heard someone shift in sleep, you flinched. And for the first time in your life, you understood something. It's not the kill that marks you. It's the silence afterward. You never hear the first shout. You're already 2 streets away, half your blade still wet inside your sleeve, the coin purse bouncing like a guilty heartbeat at your hip. You think you're fine. You always think you're fine. Until the dogs bark. Not the lazy, gutter-fed ones. The ones with collars, with names, with handlers who shout things like, this way, and he's limping. You're not, yet. You turn the corner into a narrow alley. Too narrow. You slide sideways, shoulder-scraping wet brick, the smell of rotted onions and piss clinging to your skin. Something squishes under your boot. You don't stop to guess what it was. The second shout comes from behind. Closer now. Boots. Not just 1 pair. 3, maybe 4. City guard or something worse. You pick up pace. Not a run. Not yet. Running is loud. Running draws eyes. And every window above you might hold a drunk priest, a nosy baker's wife, or someone who's been paid more than you ever will to point and say, "That one." Your breath fogs. Your hood sticks to the back of your neck. You pass two boys kicking a dead rat and they look at you like you don't belong. They're right. You reach a crossroad. Left, open street. Right, the butcher's gate, locked at night. You go forward because the only thing worse than turning back is standing still. More voices. They're spreading now, splitting up. Classic tactic. Push from the sides, drive the prey forward. Into someone who isn't shouting. You feel it coming. The part where your lungs burn, your legs scream, and every part of you wants to say, "Drop the coin, drop the knife, drop your name." But you can't, because they won't stop if you do. Not for someone like you. So now you run. Your boots slap wet stone. Your heartbeat climbs your throat. You taste metal, fear, effort, or just the inside of your mouth trying to become a blade. You vault a barrel, nearly trip. Regret the bread you ate 2 nights ago. Stale and too big. You should have known better. Should have stayed hungry. A whistle cuts the air. Not musical. Not pleasant. That sharp, tin scream that guards use when they want the world to help kill you. Doors slam. Windows creak. You hear a voice call, "There," and you don't look back. Because looking back is for men who think they still have time. You cut through a fish market. The smell hits like a slap. Old salt, wet scales, something vaguely resembling rot. You knock over a crate. Fish scatter. So does a child. You don't apologize. You see a ladder. Rotted. Wet. Not tied down. You take it anyway. Up the side of the baker's wall. 1 hand, 2 hands, foot slips. You catch yourself. Barely. Pain shoots through your shoulder like lightning made of splinters. Now you're on the roof. It creaks loudly. You crawl, not run. The tiles shift under you. One cracks. You freeze. Below you, torchlight, boots, breathing. They're not sure. Yet, you inch forward. Your breath is shallow. You've done this before. Not this roof, not this city, but this feeling. Being hunted, not feared, not respected. Just hunted, like something wild and half-starved that needs to be put down. You reach the edge, drop, land wrong. Your ankle twists, not enough to stop you, enough to punish you. You limp through a courtyard, past a sleeping mule, past a door with red chalk on the frame, a message from someone like you. You want to knock. You don't. You keep moving. Your side cramps. Your mouth is dry. The blood in your sleeve is cold now, sticky. Reminds you that this all started with one cut, one man, one name you were told to forget before it reached your tongue. You hear nothing now. No shouts, no boots, just wind. You find a drain, not a real one, just a hole behind the tanner's shop, covered in broken slats and broken promises. You crawl inside. It smells like the end of things. You welcome it. You sit in the dark. Your chest rises, falls, rises again. Alive. Just barely. And for the first time since the job started, you feel it. Not pride. Not relief. Just the slow, aching reminder that in this world, you run or you rot. You call it your apartment. Not because it is one. Not because it has walls or privacy or a functioning door. You call it that because the only other word that fits is whole. And even that would be generous to the idea of holes. It used to be part of a cellar. Then it was flooded, then abandoned, then taken over by someone who was stabbed to death in their sleep. You don't know their name. You just found the spot warm. It has 3 walls. The 4th is a wooden crate you dragged from the alley. It doesn't quite cover the opening, but it leans in a way that gives you the illusion of separation. Sometimes that's enough. There's no bed, just rags piled on top of straw, which is piled on top of rot. When it rains, and it always rains, the floor becomes something between soup and soil. You learn the hard way to sleep with your belongings under your chest. One night, your pouch floated off into the dark like it had better things to do. There's a shelf, technically. It's a loose board you wedge between 2 stones. On it, a dull blade, a broken comb, half a candle, a crust of bread you've been saving until it's either food or weapon. You keep your vial of poison tucked into a crack in the wall. Not because it's safe there, because nothing else fits. The rats here don't run from you. They acknowledge you. You're part of the furniture now. You caught one once, tried to cook it over a stolen oil lamp. It hissed at you while it burned. You still ate it. The room smells like mildew, blood, and failure. But you've gotten used to that. You don't notice anymore, unless someone new enters. Which they don't, because no one knows you live here. And if they did, they wouldn't follow. It's hidden behind the tannery, through a fence that's half piss-soaked cloth, half God knows what, down a slope, past a barrel that leaks something that shouldn't be a color. You enter by lifting the plank, crawling sideways and pretending you haven't just surrendered your dignity to darkness. Inside, it's always damp. Not wet. Damp. Damp is worse. Damp means your clothes never dry, your wounds never heal, your boots grow something. You stop checking. There's a bucket in the corner. For waste. You dump it into the alley when it gets full. Sometimes it freezes. You take that as a sign the season has changed. The air doesn't move. You light a candle, it coughs black smoke and dies within an hour. You don't light candles often anyway. They bring light. Light brings attention. Attention gets you killed. You don't decorate. Once someone left a flower at the edge of the drain. Just one. Yellow, bent, still breathing. You stared at it for 3 hours before you crushed it underfoot. You couldn't afford to want nice things. Not here. Sometimes you talk to yourself. Not words, just sounds, grunts, breaths. You need to hear something alive. You tried singing once. Your voice cracked. The rat in the corner squealed and ran. You didn't try again. There's a nail in the wall. On it hangs a sack with everything you own. Rope, blade, rag, powder. A folded note with a name on it that you're supposed to remember but haven't looked at in days. The roof leaks constantly. But not where you sleep. You chose that spot carefully. It drips just outside your blanket. A mercy or a mistake. You've been here 5 nights, which is 4 nights too many. Any longer and someone will find you. No one stays still in your line of work. Still things rot. Still things get found. Still things get buried. But for now, it's quiet. You're breathing. And the walls haven't caved in. Yet, this isn't home. This is where you wait to become someone else again. Or no one at all. It starts with the stomach, not a grumble, a warning. Deep, low, like something inside you has remembered it used to be fed. You wait, because sometimes it passes. Sometimes you can trick it with water, or air, or silence. Tonight it doesn't pass. You reach for your sack, not because it holds food, but because it might hold the memory of food. And sometimes that's enough. Inside, a crust. It used to be bread. Now it's closer to stone. Hard, sharp, dense enough to injure a man if thrown right. You sniff it. It smells like mold and the pocket it was stored in. You eat it anyway. Your teeth complain. You ignore them. They're lucky they're still attached. You chew. Slowly. Not to savor it. To keep your mouth busy while your brain counts the number of days since you had meat. 4 or 7 or none if you don't count rat. You once found a sausage in a gutter. Half bitten. Still warm. You didn't ask who started it. You just made sure you finished it. Sometimes you find food in the way others find miracles. Half a cabbage tossed from a market stall. A shriveled onion dropped in haste during a theft. Bones picked clean by dogs, then reconsidered. Your meals don't come from kitchens. They come from corners, from gutters, from chance. There's a tavern you pass where they throw out their scraps in a barrel behind the latrine. You know the time. You know the sound the lid makes when it drops. You get there early, not to be first, to not be last. Inside the barrel, you pick with your knife. Not to cut, to lift without touching. The last time you used your hands, your fingers smelled like piss for a week. You once bought a meat pie. It cost 3 coins and a favor. You ate it in 4 bites, then spent 2 nights vomiting behind a church. The baker smiled when you confronted him, said it was yesterday's dog. You weren't sure if he meant the meat or the pie's original owner. You drink when you can. Water from barrels, or cisterns, or puddles that don't shine with oil. You learned how to filter it through cloth. You learned too late. You boiled water once, used a stolen pot, burned your only blanket in the fire. It wasn't worth it. Now you just drink fast, before the flavor has time to warn you. There's tea, if you know the right widow, if you steal the right flask. And something called soup from the workhouse that tastes like heat and regret. You once killed a man with a pear in his satchel. Not for the coin, Not for the name, for the pear. It was sweet, too sweet, you cried after. From the sugar, from the shame. Your body is always tired, always aching, always just barely enough. Your fingers shake when you climb too long without rest. Your knees give out when you land wrong. Your breath shortens after 10 steps, and your heartbeat sounds like a knock on a door you don't want opened. But still, you eat. Whatever you can, however you can. Because the only thing worse than starving in this city is starving while hunted. You don't get letters. No one sends messengers to the place where you sleep. No birds come tapping at your plank door. No scrolls sealed with wax and status arrive with your name inked in bold. Because you don't have a name. Not anymore. Just a face that people forget if they're lucky. Or remember too late if they're not. So you listen. Not in rooms, in corners, in stalls, beneath balconies, through cracked shutters and floorboards that haven't yet learned not to echo. The city talks. It never stops. And what it says can save you. Or bury you. You hear it first in the market. A butcher's apprentice muttering to a baker's daughter. Words exchanged between sausage and salt. They found another body in the river, hands tied, no tongue. No name, no context, just decay in motion. You file it away. Could be one of yours. Could be someone looking for you. Then later, the fishmonger. Old. Joking with the guards, loud so everyone hears. Third noble dead in 2 weeks. Keep calling it fever, but I've never seen fever that clean. Clean. You remember that word. It means they didn't scream. Later, at the tavern, it's laughter and slurred songs. But underneath, in the low spaces between gulps, the real things come out. They say the prince keeps an assassin in the walls, pays in silver, feeds in secrets. You nod, quietly, into your cup of lukewarm broth. No one knows you're listening, not even the man saying it. He'll be dead in 4 days, not because of you, because of who he said it to. Even the brothel whispers, not the women. They've learned silence better than you. It's the clients, loose-tongued nobles, guards with too much ale, merchants who think silk sheets make them untouchable. You slip through the hall pretending to fix a lantern. You hear? The black knives in the city. Took 2 of Lord Eswin's men last week, vanished like mist. You don't correct them. You're not the black knife. You're just someone who once wore his cloak, then left it soaked in someone else's blood on a windowsill. Still, the rumor sticks, like all good ones. You visit the apothecary for poison, not to buy, to swap. One of yours for one of his. No words, just bottles. But while he labels vials, he mumbles to himself. Someone's buying nightshade in bulk, not smart, not subtle. That someone is probably trying to do what you do. They'll fail. You'll be blamed. You always are. In the slums where people drink soup from tin and pray to gutter gods, the talk changes, gets darker, more fearful. Don't go near the chapel after midnight. They say something walks the graveyard, doesn't breathe. You know what it is. You know who walks there. You know she doesn't like company. Then one day, a whisper that crawls under your skin. They're hiring in the palace, not soldiers, not scribes, something quieter. You hear it 3 times, 3 different tongues, same words, same phrasing. That's not coincidence. That's a message. You don't react. You never react. But later that night, back in your soaked rags and stone-walled hollow, you trace the names in your head. The nobles, the merchants, the old knight with the limp who bought information with tears last winter. Someone's cleaning house, and you're either next to the broom or under it. There are rumors about you too. You hear them sometimes, in laughter, in fear, in the way people say him without a name. They get things wrong. They always do. They say you poisoned an entire wedding. You didn't. You just killed the groom. The bride killed herself later. They say you only work for coin. You don't. Sometimes you work for silence, for favors, for names. They say you're already dead. That one you like. You let it spread. Rumors move faster than truth. And in your world, they last longer than justice. So you listen. You piece together lives from the scraps people leave behind in their words. You hear the city breathing. Sick, shallow. And you wonder, when it exhales, will it breathe you out? You spend a lot of time in taverns. Not because you like them. You don't. No one who's lived like you walks into a tavern hoping for warmth or stories, or the kind of laughter that makes you forget where you are. You walk in for one reason: to be invisible in plain sight. Taverns are loud. That helps. People talk over each other, yell at card tables, slam mugs, spill secrets. You sit near the edge, always near a wall, always with your back not just to it, but against it. You don't lean. You press, like the stone itself is the only thing that hasn't lied to you. You don't remove your hood. You don't remove your gloves. You sip your drink. If it's too expensive, you nurse it. If it's cheap, you pretend it's worse than it is, which isn't hard. You don't get drunk. Not anymore. Not after the alley. Not after you woke up with someone else's blade at your throat and a smile on their face that said they'd been paid in advance. The chairs are always sticky. The floor, worse. You've stepped in things that hissed. The hearth burns, but it doesn't warm you, because the man across the room saw you come in, and he didn't blink. You watch the door, always, and the back door, and the stairwell, and the cellar hatch that no one uses but someone always could. You've learned the smells: old ale, stale bread, something cooking in animal fat that may or may not have been an animal recently, sweat, mostly, and regret. That sharp, sour scent that comes off broken men who still wear their wedding rings. You don't eat much here. If you do, you ask for stew. It's hot, which hides the taste. If it comes cold, you don't touch it. Cold stew is what they give to people they don't expect to leave. You overheard that once, from the cook. She laughed when she said it. You didn't. You watch. That's the real reason you're here. Taverns are where plans fall apart, where guards loosen tongues and merchants misplace purses, where lovers argue too loud and nobles make mistakes. You once followed a man for 3 weeks, across rooftops, through alleys, past checkpoints, and then heard everything you needed in 2 minutes while he wept into his ale about his mistress and her second husband. You sat 3 stools away. You never looked up. You left before he finished. Some taverns are better than others. There's one near the river that never asks names. One near the cathedral that sells tea in mugs the size of helmets. One near the gallows that offers a free drink if you guess the condemned man's crime before sunset. You don't play. You already know the answer: poverty. The barkeep watches you. They always do. Not because they know who you are, because they know what you are. You tip with silver, never gold. Gold is loud. Gold gets remembered. You once tipped with a tooth. He kept it. The rooms upstairs are worse. Narrow beds, no locks, blankets that scratch, pillows that crunch. You sleep with your boots on and your hand on the blade under the sheet. You don't undress. You don't breathe deep. You dream fast, badly. You've woken to footsteps, to whispering, to the creak of your own heartbeat, wondering if this is the night someone returns the favor. Sometimes the tavern is the job. Someone slips you a note under the plate. Someone sits beside you and asks how long you've been working for the man in red. You never answer. You never eat the food that comes without ordering. You once killed a man in a tavern. He didn't scream. He just slumped. And the music never stopped. That's when you knew these places aren't for the living. They're for the pretending. Everyone in a tavern is running from something. You're just the only one running toward it. And when the light gets low and the candles start to flicker and the fire's gone to ash, you slip out the back like you were never there. No one remembers. No one asks. And the chair you sat in stays warm, just long enough to trick the next man into thinking he's safe. It never comes sealed. There's no scroll, no golden wax, no velvet bag delivered by trembling messenger. Real contracts, the kind you take, arrive quiet. Sometimes it's a scrap of paper left on your crate door, smudged, damp, folded too many times. Sometimes it's a name whispered into your ear by a man who doesn't blink and smells like meat left out too long. Sometimes it's a coin, just one, left where it shouldn't be. And if you find the coin, under your bread, in your sleeve, sewn into your blanket, that's not payment, that's permission. Because in your world, death has an appointment book, and you're the one who shows up early. The first time you thought there'd be more to it. Instructions, motivations, maps. There weren't. Just a name. One word written in charcoal. You stared at it for an hour before realizing it was the target, not the client. The second time, you asked questions. The man who gave it to you said, "If you need to know why, you're in the wrong trade." You never asked again. Contracts come in patterns. If it's a full name, it's personal. If it's initials, it's political. If there's no name, just a place and a time, it's a message. You won't like the message. Sometimes they give you a face, a sketch, badly drawn, always the eyes wrong. Sometimes it's just a scent, clove oil, lilies, wet iron. You once tracked a man by the way he whistled when nervous, another by the limp he tried to hide, another by the mark on his ring finger where a wife used to be. You don't meet the clients, not directly. You meet the messengers. They don't smile. They don't ask how you've been. They pass the contract like it's rotten fish, quickly, with fingers curled like touching it too long might curse them. You tried to refuse once. The man who brought the job looked at you for a long moment, then said, "Then we'll find someone else, and they'll start with you." You took it. Sometimes it's money. Sometimes it's food. Sometimes it's information. A name off your own back. Sometimes, if the job's messy, if the client's rich, if they want it to look like something it's not, you get paid in silence. And that's the most valuable kind. You never negotiate, because you're not supposed to be real, and real people don't haggle with ghosts. Once you got a contract with your own name on it, just your name, no other details, you burned it before finishing the read. You moved cities that night. Some contracts are loud. A poisoning in front of nobles. A man pushed from the bell tower during festival. A widow's heart stopped by a fall into her husband's sword. Those pay well, but you don't sleep after them. Other contracts are silent. A whisper behind a stable. A rope in the dark. A body no one will miss because no one ever claimed it in the first place. Those pay less, but you sleep better. Slightly. You learn to read between the lines. If they want it clean, it means painful. If they want it quick, it means messy. If they say make sure he suffers, it means someone already has. You've been hired by priests, by merchants, by widows, by other killers. You've been paid with rings, teeth, locks of hair. Once with a key. You still don't know what it opens. You wear it around your neck. For luck, or irony. And sometimes, rarely, a contract doesn't mean kill. Sometimes it means warn. Sometimes disappear. Sometimes break every finger and leave him praying that next time the contract is for death. You used to care. You don't anymore. Because the truth is, the contract doesn't change you. It reveals what's left of you. And in this line of work, that's never much. You never know their story. Not really. You get a name, sometimes an age. Once a song they liked, hummed by the woman who paid you to stop his breathing. But you never know the full picture. You don't know who rocked them as a child, what they prayed for, what they regret. You only know where they'll be, and when, and how fast their heart stops if the blade is angled right. That's your relationship, intimate, but one-sided. You watch them for days, from alleys, from windows, from rooftops that creak and bleed under your boots. You learn their rhythm. He scratches his neck when nervous. She taps the table 3 times before speaking. He counts coins twice every time, as if money could vanish if he looks away. She closes her eyes before she lies. You memorize it all, because you only get one moment, and when it comes, you don't get to pause. Some look harmless, children barely grown, old men with stooped backs, women who hum lullabies to no one while they sweep. And yet, someone wants them gone. You don't ask why anymore. You used to. The answers never helped. Traitor. Thief. Liar. Wrong place. Once it was. She looked too much like someone I lost. You still think about that one. You follow them through markets, temples, bathhouses. You learn the weight of their footsteps. You know which stall they stop at, even when they're not buying. You know how they hold a cup, how they smile when they think no one's watching. Sometimes they look behind them, and for a moment, you wonder if they know. Some do. They always do. You see it in their eyes. The ones who've hired before. The ones who know how the world works. They don't run. They don't cry. They just lock eyes with you like they're checking how close they are to the end. And then they lower their gaze. Because that somehow still feels like control. Some beg. Some fight. Some whisper something that sounds like a name, and you never know if they meant someone they loved, or someone who hired you. The children are the worst. Not because you take those jobs. You don't. You'd rather starve, but you still see them sometimes. Holding hands with the target. Laughing near them. Asking for one more story before bed. You wait. You delay. You hope they leave the room. They usually don't, so you find a quieter way. Poison in the cup, a slip on the steps, an embrace that ends with steel. The cleanest kills happen mid-laughter, the messiest in silence. You once watched a woman pray for an hour, in the dark, on her knees, alone. Then you cut her throat. You didn't mean to cry after, but some part of you was convinced she was praying for you. And maybe she was. Because here's the thing no one tells you about being a killer. Eventually, you stop seeing the difference between them and you. They lie. You lie. They run. You run. They bleed. You will too. They beg. You already have. The target is never just a person. It's a mirror. And if you stare too long, you start to see your own reflection move when they die. They say doubt gets you killed. And usually they're right. But what they don't tell you is this. Before doubt kills you, it lives with you. It starts small. A delay. A hesitation. You watch the target cross a square, and something, not fear, not mercy, something quieter, holds your hand back. Not long. Just long enough. You follow anyway. You do the job. But that pause, it plants something. The next time, it comes earlier. You're standing behind a man at a well, your blade tucked inside your sleeve, and you wonder, who fills this well when he's gone? You shake the thought off. You kill him. He doesn't scream, but something in you does. Later, you sit in your room, you're whole, and you stare at your hands like they belong to someone else. Because they did something your mind no longer explains. You used to believe the job was clean. Not elegant, never that, but clean in purpose. There's a target. There's a reason. You act. The world tilts slightly. Life continues. Then the doubt comes, and suddenly everything stinks. You think about who gave the order. Why? Was it coin? Jealousy? Some slight so old it's already become myth? You think about who else could have done it. Why it had to be you. Why you said yes. You remember the way she looked at you. The mark, when you stepped from the dark. No surprise, no fear. Just a quiet, tired understanding. And then she said it. You look young. She was right. You were 20. But your spine felt older. Your breath already belonged to someone who'd seen too much. You didn't kill her that night. You left. You drank. You walked 5 miles through mud just to be somewhere else. Then you came back. You told yourself you had to. That mercy was just cruelty with poor timing. That hesitation would only make the next killer sloppier. You told yourself a lot of things. You're good at that now. But something changed. Now you pause every time. Sometimes a heartbeat. Sometimes an hour. You watch your targets longer. You learn things you're not supposed to. He hums while he cooks. She feeds stray dogs. He limps because he tried to save a child during a fire. None of it matters. But it does. You used to close your eyes after a kill and feel nothing. Now you see faces. Not just the dead. The ones who hired you. The ones who said, make it look like an accident. The ones who smiled too wide when you returned with empty hands. You wonder, what if it's not them who are monsters? What if it's the ones who pay? What if it's you? That's the problem with doubt. It doesn't make you better. It just makes you slower, quieter, colder. You still kill. You still move like smoke, still vanish into walls and rain and laughter that dies too fast. But afterward, you don't wash your hands right away. You sit with the blood. You let it dry a little. You feel the weight of it before it's gone. Not because you like it. Because you want to remember it was real, and because part of you hopes, maybe next time, you'll say no, and maybe this time, you'll survive the price of that choice. It didn't feel like a mistake, not at first. It felt like every other night. Wet boots, wet cloak, wet breath fogging up inside your hood as you watched a man slice cheese behind a barred window. That was him, you were sure. Same jaw, same beard, same slight lean to the left when he walked. He even scratched his neck just like the sketch said. So you waited, counted backwards from 100, twice, slipped the blade loose, moved like you always do, quiet, low, under the world. You slid in through the back while he was still setting the table. One plate, one candle, one sigh from a throat that didn't know it was about to be cut. It was clean, fast. You even left the window cracked like you were proud of the draft. You were 2 streets away before your hand started to tremble. That was the first clue. You never shake. Second clue. No knock on the back of your door that night. No coin under the basin. No note. Third clue. The news spread anyway. But the name was wrong. Wrong man, wrong house, wrong job. You killed someone else. Not a tyrant, not a traitor, not a client's enemy. Just a man with a beard and a candle and cheese on his breath. You wait for the fallout. It doesn't come fast. That's the worst part, because the silence after a mistake is louder than any scream. You walk the market and it feels like everyone knows, like every glance lingers, like every whisper bends toward your spine. You try to sleep. You can't. You hear the sound again, not the killing, but the way the knife slid in too easily. Like the body wasn't resisting, like it wanted to help. That's how you know he wasn't a threat. Threats stiffen, victims sigh. You try to eat. You can't. You bite bread and think of the man's hand twitching once, then never again. You go back. 2 nights later. You want to see if anyone mourned. There's a candle in the window, fresh, a flower tucked beside it. No guards, no screams, just quiet. That hurts more than anything, because it means no one expected him to die, which means no one expected you. And that means whoever gave you the contract, they wanted this, a test, a warning, or worse, a distraction. You go back to your hole. You sit with your blade in your lap. You stare at it for a long time. It hasn't changed, but you have. Now you check twice. Now you watch longer. Now you ask, quietly and only once, if the name makes sense. And sometimes, you hesitate. That's how you know the mistake never really leaves. It lives with you, sleeps beside you, breathes when you forget to. It doesn't get you killed, but it follows you, like a second shadow, with blood on its hands. You're not special, no matter what they whisper, no matter what the legends say, no matter how many people flinch when you pass too close in the fog. You're not the only one. There are others. You've seen them. You've heard of them. You've worked beside them. You've survived because of them. You've almost died because of them. And that's the truth nobody likes to say out loud. The city doesn't have one blade in the dark. It has dozens. Some are old. Veterans who limp not from wounds but from time. Men and women who learned long ago that killing clean isn't the same as killing well. You meet them in taverns, in silence. They nod once. They drink alone. They know exactly who you are, and exactly when you'll be them. Some are young, too young, barely holding the blade right, but fast, hungry, willing to do things even you won't. They get the messy jobs, the ones where the body needs to be found, the ones where the screams matter more than the silence. They burn bright, then burn out. You never learn their names, because they don't last long enough to need one. And then there are the legends, not the ones the drunks talk about, the real ones, the killers who don't take coin, who kill for balance, for messages, for gods no one prays to anymore. You saw one once, didn't speak, didn't blink. She passed through a square full of guards like wind through smoke, left 5 men dead, didn't even draw her blade all the way. You didn't follow her. You didn't breathe until she was gone. Some are loud. They leave signs. They want the city to know. Symbols carved into skin. Coins left on tongues. A single glove nailed to a door. It's theater. It's ego. It works. Because fear kills faster than steel. Others are quiet. So quiet even you wonder if they exist. Jobs go unfinished. Or done too early. Or no one remembers who ordered it or why. You find a corpse with no mark. No weapon. No witness. You ask around. No one answers. Not because they don't know. Because they do. And they're afraid to say the name. Some of them work in groups. You don't. You tried once. Too many eyes. Too many hands. Too many chances for someone to blink when they should have cut. But others, they form circles. Tight. Efficient. Deadly. They pass contracts among themselves like bread. They drink together. Bleed together. Disappear together. And if you cross one, you've crossed all. You watch your corners when they're in town. And then sometimes you get a contract and you recognize the name. Not the target, the client, another assassin, hiring you. That's when it gets complicated. Because maybe it's a job. Maybe it's a setup. Maybe it's both. You killed one once. You didn't want to, but it was him or you. He smiled when you slipped the blade between his ribs. Said, "Took you long enough." You still hear that every time your own name gets too quiet in the dark. Because here's the real curse of being a killer in a city full of them. You stop wondering if someone's better. You start wondering if someone's closer to your jobs, your habits, your hiding spots. closer to your clients, closer to the names on your list, closer to your name. And when that day comes, when someone else gets the contract with your face on it, you won't know until it's too late. You thought you understood pain. You didn't. You thought pain was the sting of a knife slipping too far, the crunch of ribs under a fall, the way your fingers burn when they've clung to a ledge too long in the rain. You thought it was bruises, bone, blood. That's not pain. That's injury. That's damage. Pain is something else entirely. Pain is what stays. It comes in the morning, when your eyes open, but the rest of you doesn't follow. Because your body is busy reminding you that you are not whole. Not anymore. Your shoulder grinds when you reach above your head. A gift from a rooftop jump that went wrong 2 winters ago. You never fixed it. You just got used to the sound. Your knees ache in the cold. Not because you're old, you're not. But because stone does not care what age you are when you land on it night after night. Your back tightens like rope when you stand too fast. Your hand twitches when it rains. Your left ankle gives out sometimes without warning. A memory of the man who pushed you down a well and didn't wait to see if you climbed out. You smell copper even when there's no blood. You hear footsteps when there's no one behind you. You wince at shadows that flicker just wrong. But the worst pain? It's not in the flesh. It's the kind that lives behind the eyes, where names used to be, where memories used to warm. Pain is remembering who they were, after they're gone, not the target. The boy who helped you climb out of the sewer when you were 10. The woman who taught you to tie knots with frozen fingers. The friend who laughed too loudly and ran too slow. Pain is walking past the bakery you used to hide behind, and realizing it's been burned down for 3 years. And you still think of it as safe. Pain is what happens when you sit still long enough for ghosts to find you. It doesn't scream, it whispers. You try not to listen. You move, always moving, because motion distracts. Running gives you purpose. Falling gives you something to focus on. You even take jobs you shouldn't, just for the hurt. Pain becomes a compass. If you feel it, you're still here. You've known killers who tried to numb it. Ale, powder, women, fire. None of it worked. One man cut into his own arm every morning. Not deep, just enough. Said it made him feel fresh. He smiled too much. He died too slowly. You've tried silence. Didn't help. You tried prayer. Didn't take. You tried love. Once. She held your face with both hands like she thought it could be saved. You told her your name. Not your real one, but the one you wished was yours. She said it softly, like a secret she was willing to keep. Then one morning she was gone. No note, no trace. Just the scent of rosemary where she used to sleep. You still dream about her. And when you wake, your chest feels like it's collapsing inward. That's pain. That's the kind you can't fight with a blade. And you wouldn't know how if you tried. Because no one teaches assassins how to grieve. They only teach you how to disappear. It starts in the fingertips, not with frostbite. That comes later. With a stiffness, like your skin forgot how to bend. You flex your hands. They creak. You rub them together. The sound is paper, not flesh. Winter doesn't arrive in this city. It settles, like smoke, like mold, like a tax. And you feel it in everything. The cobblestones freeze uneven. You learn where to step and where your ankle will roll if you're not careful. You stop climbing rooftops unless you have to. Not because you can. Because you don't like falling through ice-covered tile and landing in someone's wash basin with a blade in your ribs and a dog on your throat. You layer everything. Shirt, cloak, ragged scarf that used to belong to someone who bled slower than you do. But it doesn't help. The wind gets in, not around you, through you. It slides under your skin like a second soul, colder than the first. The city changes in winter. The smell shifts. Less rot, more smoke. You'd think that was better. It isn't. The smoke burns your lungs. You cough when you run. And if they hear you, that's it. You don't breathe deeply anymore. You sip air. Your breath fogs. So you stop speaking unless you must. Words give you away. Even warmth gives you away. The guards wear gloves. So do you. But yours have holes. Not because you can't sew. Because the holes remind you to feel the dagger. That's the trade in winter. Warmth for readiness. You eat less. Not because you want to. Because there's less. Vendors vanish. Markets empty. Even rats get thin. You chew stale bread so long your jaw aches. You drink broth that's mostly water, with the ghost of meat floating on the surface. And you kill slower, not because you hesitate, because winter changes the way blood behaves. It thickens, cools faster, stains your blade like ink instead of red. You once stabbed a man in an alley and had to kick the knife free. His coat froze around it. It made a sound you still hear when you sleep. The bodies last longer in winter. Too long. They don't rot fast. They sit in the snow, faces preserved like statues, eyes open longer, mouths stiff in whatever last shape you left them. The city stops cleaning up. You see corpses on steps, frozen in prayer. You see children curled under bridges, their lips blue, their hands still clutched around bread they never finished. And you keep moving, because stillness is death. You work during snowstorms. They hide footprints, muffle screams, make the streetlights glow like candlelight. But snow also blinds. You once killed the wrong man because you miscounted coats in a blizzard. You waited 4 hours outside the same door, frozen to the spine, only to find out your target left through a tunnel. He left a candle for you, still burning. Mockery and wax. You don't talk about winter with other killers. You don't talk about anything, really. But if you did, you'd all agree. Summer brings blood, but winter brings ghosts. And ghosts don't scream. They breathe, right beside you, right behind you. Their fingers colder than the steel in your hand. You spend more time above the city than in it. Not because it's safer, it isn't, but because it's simpler. Down there, it's noise, crowds, swords, cobblestone that echoes too much when you run. Up here, wind, smoke, slates, gravity. You learn the rooftops fast. Not like streets, like lovers. Every crack, every loose tile, every board that groans just before it snaps. You don't walk them. You float, or you try to, because the rooftops don't forgive. You step wrong, you fall, and you don't fall like a man. You fall like a secret, like something never meant to exist in the first place. You've broken ribs, twice. You've dislocated your shoulder dropping from a chapel roof to escape a guard who thought he was chasing a thief. You landed in a fruit cart. The merchant screamed louder than the guard. You threw him a coin before you vanished. He still leaves out apples when it rains, just in case. Some rooftops are slanted so sharp they slice your boots. Some are so flat you forget how high you are, until the edge doesn't catch you. You've seen birds freeze to chimneys. You've seen snow build into drifts so deep you stepped into one and sank up to your waist. You had to crawl across a church's dome on your stomach, praying no one looked up. They didn't, because no one looks up. That's why rooftops are perfect. People down there, they don't expect death to fall. But rooftops aren't quiet. They're alive. They creak. They shift. They moan when the wind pulls too hard. Some roofs collapse. One did, under your friend. You heard the wood crack. You saw him drop. He didn't scream. You listened to the silence after, and then you left. Not because you're heartless, because staying would have made it worse. You went back later, found his blade. It was stuck in a beam, like it tried to stay behind. You still carry it. You don't speak his name. Rooftops burn in summer. You've run barefoot across them more than once. No time to think, just leather melting and skin blistering under sun-baked tiles. Your soles cracked for weeks. You wrapped them in cloth, still ran. Because pain is quieter than being seen. And some rooftops? Some are cursed. You don't step on the north wall of the Red Inn. You don't touch the chimney above the Baker's Guild. You don't land on the slats above the graveyard, not since the night you did, and something looked up at you through the roof. You tell yourself it was a bird. It wasn't. Up here you're a shadow between chimneys, a whisper between the bell and the belfry, a ghost that runs when no one else hears footsteps. But the worst part of rooftops? The sky. It's too open. You look up and there's nothing. Stars that don't care. Clouds that drift. Air that forgets your name. You're exposed. Even when you're hidden, you feel the weight of the city under your boots, and the weight of the world pressing down from above. You once saw the sun rise from a bell tower after a job. Just stood there, blood on your hands, breath turning silver in the wind. For 1 second it was beautiful, and then the cold came, and the guilt, and the ache in your knees. And you remembered, you're not meant to see beauty. You're meant to vanish into it. Rooftops don't offer escape. They offer silence. And silence is only kind if you don't stop moving. No one ever talks about the waiting. They talk about the kill, the strike, The chase through alleys, the whisper of steel, the final breath. They never talk about the 8 hours before that, where you crouch in a rafter in complete stillness and learn what it means to vanish not just from sight, but from time. Waiting is the real job. You wait in the dark. You wait in the cold. You wait in crawl spaces, behind curtains, under floorboards, in ceilings that groan with every heartbeat. You wait until your legs cramp, until your knees swell, until your lungs forget how to breathe without making sound. The job said sunset. That was 5 hours ago. Now it's deep night. The candles are low. The house is quiet. But he hasn't come home. You're still in the attic, pressed between wooden beams. Your muscles hum with stillness. Your cloak sticks to your skin. You haven't blinked in a while. You can't feel your toes. That's fine. Pain is better than motion, because motion gives you away. And you've waited too long to be stupid now. You listen. That's all you do. The floorboards below, the wind, the mice in the wall, the man outside the window coughing. Not your target. Just another ghost with lungs full of ash. You hear a dog bark, far off, then again closer. You wonder if it's trained. You wonder if it smells you. You don't move. You never move. Your nose itches. You ignore it. Your eye waters. You blink one eye, slowly, like it hurts to remember it exists. You count breaths. You lose track. You start again. You watch the door. Still no one. You think maybe he left town. Maybe the job was bad. Maybe the man who gave it to you lied. Or maybe, click, a key in the lock. You don't move. Not yet. You wait. You let him stumble in, drop his cloak, mutter something about wine. You let him sigh. Let him light a candle. You watch him like you've been watching for hours. Because you have. Now your body wants to move, desperately. Every part of you screams to shift, to breathe, to stop being the shape of a gargoyle hidden in rotten wood. But you wait. Because it's not the right moment. Not yet. He's talking to himself. Sits, pours something, doesn't drink it. You wonder who he lost. You wonder who lost him. It takes 12 minutes for him to go to sleep. You count everyone. Now you slide, quietly. You're a ripple in air. You land behind him. He doesn't stir. You lean close. You hear him snore once. Then you wait again. Because this second, is the most dangerous. The hand trembles. The knife feels too heavy. You smell him now. Soap, fear, and something bitter. You wait. Because when you strike, the waiting ends. And endings are messy. You make the cut. Fast. Deep. Certain. No scream. No struggle. You hold him until he stops shaking. That's not kindness. That's habit. Now the room is still again. But it's a different stillness. Not the stillness of waiting. The stillness after. You clean the blade. Check the window. Slip out. No footsteps, no breath. But in the alley, you stop. You crouch. You rest your back to the wall. And you wait. Again. Not for danger. Just because your body doesn't know what else to do. You waited 8 hours for one motion. And now, you don't know how to be again. That's the secret they never teach you. The more you wait, the less you remember who you were before. And eventually, you stop waiting to return. Because whatever life you had, it stopped showing up. A long time ago. You don't start out alone. No one does. Even ghosts used to be people. In the beginning, you believed. Not in goodness, not in gods, but in someone. Someone who said they'd watch your back. Someone who said your name like it mattered. Someone who knew how you moved before you moved. Knew where you'd hide before you hid. Knew what you feared and didn't flinch. You met them when you were young. Before your fingers knew how to hold a blade properly. Before your eyes learned how to follow a man through 5 alleys without blinking. They didn't recruit you. They didn't train you. They saw you. That was worse. Because when someone sees you in this life, they own part of you, whether they mean to or not. You ran jobs together, small ones at first. Messages, distractions, watch the mark, draw attention, draw blood. They were faster, smarter. You never said it, but you knew. And when things went wrong, they didn't run. They stayed. They bled beside you. So you started to trust them. You told them the name you never gave clients. You showed them your hiding place under the bridge with the warped beam. You let them sharpen your blade. Once you let them sleep beside you. Just once. Nothing happened. But it was the best night's sleep you'd had in 3 years. Then came the job. The one that paid too well. The one with too few details. Too many silences, too many variables. They said it was clean, simple. Quick in, quick out. You believed them because you trusted them. You were wrong. You remember every second of what followed. The window was already open, too open, like it had been left that way. The stairs didn't creak, not because they were new, because someone had reinforced them. The target wasn't asleep. He wasn't drunk. He was ready. And behind you, where your partner was supposed to be, there was no sound, just absence. You fought, not well. You survived, barely. You limped 3 miles across the edge of the city, bleeding into the snow, blade gone, heartbeat ragged. You slept in a drain tunnel for 2 nights. When the fever broke, you went looking. They were gone. No trace. No note. Just gone. Like they'd never existed. You spent weeks trying to make sense of it. Was it greed? Fear? Were they forced? Or, and this is the worst one, did they just stop caring? The answer never came. Eventually, you stopped asking. Because in this life, silence is the only explanation anyone owes. Now you don't trust. Not really. You take coin. You take names. You take blades and bruises and memories that wake you up sweating. But you don't take hands. Not anymore. You meet others like you sometimes. Quiet killers. Drifters with the same eyes. You nod, you work, you leave. Because you know where trust leads. It leads to open windows, and silent staircases, and blood in your mouth that tastes like someone else's name. You still remember them. Of course you do. Their laugh. The way they always carried 2 knives, one for the mark, one for insurance. The scar near their ear, shaped like a crescent moon. You don't hate them. You can't afford to. Hate is too heavy. You just file the memory away, with the rest. And when someone new says, "You can trust me," you smile, and you say, "I know." But inside, you're already imagining how you'll kill them if you have to. Because trust in this world doesn't get you killed. It gets you betrayed. And betrayal? That stays longer than scars. At first, you're quiet because you have to be. Step too loud, you die. Breathe too hard, they hear. Speak, and someone remembers your voice. And voices lead to faces. Faces lead to names. And names get buried. So you stop talking, only when needed, only when safe, only when sure no one else is listening. Then it becomes a habit. You answer in nods. You gesture instead of greet. You let silence fill spaces where people expect words. At first they call it mysterious. Then they call it unsettling. Then they stop calling you anything at all. You realize people don't like what they can't hear. You watch them fill silence like it's a fire they're afraid to sit too close to. They talk over meals, over wine, over bodies, over graves. You listen, always listen. You learn more in silence than words ever give. How long someone hesitates before saying yes. What it means when they rub their thumb against their cup. How "I'm fine" sounds different when it's been rehearsed. You learn that silence isn't emptiness. It's weight. And you've grown strong carrying it. But here's the part they never tell you. Eventually, the silence stops being armor and starts being you. You wake in the middle of the night and don't call out. Because no one's there. And because you wouldn't even if they were. You injure your legs slipping on a frozen beam. You tear skin. You bite your tongue to stay still. The scream stays in your throat. You don't cry. Not because you're strong. Because crying is sound. And sound means something inside you broke through. You don't let that happen anymore. Sometimes a child looks at you and says, "Why doesn't he talk?" And someone answers, "He just doesn't like to." That's not true. You miss talking. Or at least you miss what it felt like before words became dangerous. You remember the last real thing you said. Not to a mark. Not to a client. To someone who mattered. It was something small. Stupid even. "You always tie your boots too tight." She laughed. Said it was the only way to outrun people like you. She wasn't wrong. Now years later, the memory stings. Not because she's gone, but because you remember the sound of your own voice, and you haven't heard it since. You try sometimes, when no one's around. You whisper into the dark, just to check if it still works. It does. But it doesn't feel like you anymore. It sounds older, rougher. Like someone who buried too many names and never carved his own. Your throat tightens after 3 words. You stop at 4. You go back to silence. It's safer, quieter, but not peaceful. Peace is something soft, gentle, something you earn after pain. Silence is not soft. It's sharp. A blade you turned inward. Because the truth is, you could speak. You could tell the truth. You could say what happened. You could say you regret it. You could say you still see them when you close your eyes. You could say anything. But if you did, you might not stop. And then, you'd be human again. And humans don't survive in your world. Shadows do. And shadows don't speak. There's always a price. Even when the job goes clean. Even when no one sees. Even when the blade moves fast, the blood flows quiet, the body falls soft. You pay. Not in coin. Not in scars. Those are cheap, replaceable. You pay in pieces. Of yourself. Of your voice. Of your past. No one warns you. They tell you it'll be hard. That it'll hurt. That it'll be lonely. But they never say it'll cost who you are. It starts small. You forget birthdays. Yours, theirs, doesn't matter. You stop writing things down. What's the point? There's no one to read it. No one to remember. You lose track of time. What year it is. What season? Was it autumn when she died or spring? Did you bury that boy in snow or was that blood that steamed in the grass? You stop asking. Your hands don't shake anymore. Not because you're steady. Because they've forgotten how to feel. You sit at the edge of rooftops and watch families move like shadows. Father brings bread. Mother scrubs clothes. Child laughs. You feel nothing. Not envy. Not grief. Just distance. Like the glass in a cathedral window. They're warm behind it. You're the wind outside. You once had a brother, you think. Or maybe it was a friend. Someone who ran with you when you were both too young to bleed for coin. You can't remember his name. Just the scar on his knuckle. And how he whistled when he was scared. You forgot how the song went. That's the price. You remember the jobs, but not the lives you had between them. You remember the targets, but not the people who held your arm after it shook. You remember how to kill, but not how to be. They think you're dangerous. They're right, but not because of the knife. Because you've become hollow in all the places that used to be human. You're precise. You're cold. You're quiet. And they call that strength. But it isn't. It's debt. A long, slow debt you pay by losing the ability to live in your own skin. You see a dog get kicked in the street. You don't flinch. You see a child cry alone. You keep walking. Not because you don't care. Because caring would mean feeling something. And you can't afford that anymore. Emotion is liability. Attachment is threat. Memory is weakness. You tell yourself you chose this. You were good at it. You are good at it. One of the best. You tell yourself that means something. That being efficient is a kind of nobility. But some nights, you wake up and realize you've been whispering the names of people who never made it out. You count them, not like trophies, like gravestones. You whisper to them, as if they're still listening, as if you still deserve to be heard. And in those moments, you wonder, was it worth it? The silence answers. It always does. It came like any other, folded parchment. Sealed in black wax, left on your cot while you slept with one eye open. You didn't hear them leave it. That was the first sign. You unsealed it slowly, not out of caution, out of something colder. Inside, just a name, a place, a time, but no payment, no coin, no symbol, no proof of client, just a name. And you stopped breathing when you saw it. Because it wasn't just a name, it was his. You read it again, then again. You hadn't spoken that name in a decade, hadn't allowed it in your thoughts, hadn't walked the streets where he used to live, hadn't gone near the square where he used to wait for you after jobs with 2 cups of black tea. Your mouth went dry, not with fear, with memory, because that name didn't belong to a target. It belonged to the only person who ever pulled you out of blood and said, "You're not just what they made you." And now someone wanted him gone, by your hand. You sat with it for a long time. Hours, maybe days. You didn't light a lamp. You didn't eat. You just sat there while the wind crept in through the cracks and asked the question you wouldn't. Would you do it? Because the truth was, you could. You knew where he lived now. You'd checked years ago in a moment of weakness. He'd moved inland, took a different name, started over. He had a child. You saw her once, from across the river. She laughed like he did. Quick, honest, unafraid. You could kill him. You could kill him clean, fast, no sound, no trace. You'd done it before, to better men, to worse ones, but not to him. You remembered the last thing he said to you, not when he vanished. Before that, after a job, blood on your hands. eyes hollow. He looked at you and said, "If they ever send you for me, I hope you don't flinch." You hadn't answered. You just nodded, because back then flinching still felt possible. Now, you weren't sure you remembered how. You stared at the parchment until the ink bled in your mind, until the name stopped looking like a name, started looking like a grave. You left it on the table, didn't burn it, didn't hide it, just walked out. The night air was cold, not winter, but that kind of chill that tells you something's ending. You didn't take your full kit, just one blade, the first one he ever gave you. You'd kept it sharp, even when you stopped using it. You walked the whole way, didn't run, didn't leap across rooftops like the old days. You walked like a man going to his own reckoning. The house was there, modest, worn, lantern in the window, child's shoes by the door. You didn't knock. You didn't sneak. You stood in the shadow across the lane and waited for him to come out, to see you, to know, to flinch or not. But the door never opened. You waited hours and then you left, because that was the job, not to kill him, to choose not to. And when you turned your back on that door, you finally understood the price of every other contract, all the names, all the silence, all the pain. It wasn't about who you killed. It was about who you could have killed and didn't, and how few of those names ever mattered. But this one did, and maybe, in that moment, for the first time in years, you weren't an assassin. You were something else, someone else, even if just for a single night. You survived. That's supposed to mean something, but it doesn't. Not here, not now. No contracts, no names, no whispers in alleyways, no blades under pillows, no red wax seals in the moonlight. Just silence. The kind that doesn't hide anything. The kind that is the truth. You thought you'd feel relief, or pride, or at least weightlessness. But you don't. You feel nothing. You wake up when you want. You sleep through the night. No one's hunting you. No one's watching. Your weapons are wrapped in linen. You haven't unwrapped them in weeks. The oil dried out. The blades dulled. It doesn't matter, because no one's paying for your hands anymore, and your hands don't know what to do with that. You tried to work, tried to chop wood for coin. It made your back ache in the wrong way. Too straight, too slow. You tried to tend a garden. Your knees didn't bend right anymore. You tried to speak to a merchant's wife at the well. She smiled. You forgot how to smile back. So now you sit at the edge of the village, in the ruined barn no one uses, wrapped in your old cloak, watching chickens pick at the dirt. You haven't killed in months, but your breath still slows when someone walks behind you. You still sleep with your back to the wall, still check the corners, still dream of footsteps that never come. There's a boy who watches you. He thinks you're strange. He's not wrong. He asks questions sometimes. Were you a soldier? You say no. Did you ever go to the Capitol? You say yes. Did you ever kill a dragon? You don't answer. He laughs. He makes one up for you. He says you used to ride through cities on a black horse, saving people. You let him believe it, because he's the first person who's ever looked at you and seen anything but a shadow. And maybe that's all the redemption you'll ever get. You tried to pray once. It felt like lying. You wrote your name in the dirt. It didn't look real. You walked to the edge of the forest where the trees grow so dense the sun forgets how to get in. You stood there for hours just listening. The birds didn't care who you were. The wind didn't ask what you'd done. It was the kindest silence you've ever known. You think maybe you could go in. Keep walking. Let the trees take you. Let the world forget. But you didn't. Not yet. Because part of you still believes you haven't finished paying. Not in blood. In being here. Existing. Living with what's left. Every morning you open your eyes. You check your hands. Still there. You flex them slowly, as if expecting them to vanish. They don't. So you stand. And you walk. No purpose. No contract. Just a body that refuses to stop. And in that refusal, maybe there's meaning. Not forgiveness. Not peace. Just the smallest possibility that someday you'll stop flinching when someone says your name. Even if it's not the name you were born with. Even if it's not the name they used to whisper in fear. Even if it's just a child's voice saying, "Mister, do you want to play?" And maybe you say yes. And maybe, for a moment, you remember how to be something more than what they made you. Something human.